It was on June 19th, 2005, the day that boos filled the track rather than cheers. From tyre failures to the reshaping of the track and a significant boycott, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway race was a chaotic day that forever soured the reputation of the sport. But what happened on that day, and why did it happen? And more importantly, why wasn't it avoided? So in this video, we'll be reliving Formula One's dark past. Although a total of 20 cars were present for the race, only the 6 cars belonging to teams using Bridgestone tyres, Ferrari, Jordan and Minardi, actually competed. Meanwhile, the other 14 cars, which were equipped with Michelin tyres, completed the formation lap, but then retired to the pit lane right before the race officially began. This was an era when the FIA hadn't incorporated the one tyre supplier system. Where it all began, Michelin tyre failures. Now, 2 days prior to the race, there was a significant crash during the practice session at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Ralf Schumacher, who was driving for the Toyota team, experienced a severe accident at turn 13 due to a failure of the left rear tyre. As a result, Schumacher was unable to continue racing for the rest of the weekend. Therefore, the team brought in Ricardo Zonta, their test driver, to replace Schumacher for the remaining sessions. However, Zonta also suffered a left rear tyre failure during practice. It's worth noting that turn 13 was a high-speed bank turn, which was quite unique in Formula One racing at that time, and this particular turn subjected the tyres to a higher than usual load. The section of the track had been recently repaved with a more abrasive surface since the previous Grand Prix, which could have increased the stress on the tyres even further. Following the incident, Michelin, the tyre supplier for 7 customer teams, including Toyota, Red Bull, Bars, Sauber, McLaren, Renault and Williams, expressed confusion about the tyre failures at turn 13. Hence, they announced their plan to fly in tyres of a different specification from their headquarters in Clermont-Ferrand a day before the race. However, the replacement tyres brought in, which were the same type used in the Spanish Grand Prix earlier that year, exhibited the same issue during testing. The back and forth. Therefore, on June 18th, Michelin representatives Pierre Dupasquier and Nick Shorrock wrote a letter to FIA race director Charlie Whiting addressing the Toyota tyre failures. They admitted that they were uncertain about the cause of these failures. Additionally, they stated that unless the cars could be slowed down in turn 13, they couldn't guarantee the safety of the tyres for more than 10 laps. How did the FIA respond? In response, Charlie Whiting expressed his surprise that Michelin had not brought appropriate tyres for the race. He suggested that the team should instruct their drivers to adhere to the maximum safe speed specified by Michelin in turn 13. Whiting also discussed various proposed solutions from the teams and emphasised that the use of the new specification tyres that were flown in overnight will be considered a breach of the rules and will be reviewed by the stewards. Furthermore, he stated that modifying the track layout by introducing a chicane to the turn was not an option, since any alteration of the track layout would automatically make the race a non-championship race. Consequently, Whiting considered the proposals put forth by the Michelin teams to be grossly unfair to the teams using Bridgestone tyres. Michelin's response. In a second letter, Dupasquier and Shorrock from Michelin reiterated their stance. They stated that their teams would not allow their cars to race on the Michelin tyres used in qualification unless changes were made to the circuit, and they once again emphasised their request to slow down turn 13 for safety reasons. However, Charlie Whiting still maintained that no modifications to the circuit would be allowed. He presented the teams with 3 options. First, they could limit speeds through turn 13 as a precautionary measure. Second, they could use tyres of a different specification than those used in qualifying, but this would result in a penalty. And third, they could change tyres repeatedly, which would have been permissible if a driver's safety was at stake. Nonetheless, on the day of the race, around 10 AM, Paul Stoddart, the owner of Minardi, met with Bernie Ecclestone, CEO and President of Formula One Administration and Formula One Management, 2 senior Michelin representatives, Speedway President Tony George, the Michelin technical representatives of the teams, and the team principals, with the exception of Jean Todt, the team principal of Scuderia Ferrari, who was also invited but didn't attend. By the end of this meeting, they all agreed that the installation of chicane in turn 13 would be the best option, and preparations for the installation began shortly after. However, Eccleston returned to the group around 10:55 am and informed them that Tott had refused to agree to the installation of the chicane. Tott allegedly stated that the issue was an FIA and Michelin problem and not his responsibility. Furthermore, Eccleston reported that Max Mosley, the FIA president, had declared that any attempts to alter the circuit would result in the immediate cancellation of the Grand Prix. Alternative options. Subsequently, the group continued to brainstorm alternative solutions to the situation. Some of the proposed ideas included organising a non-championship race, a race where the Michelin teams would be unable to score points, or a race where only the Michelin teams would use the new chicane. However, they eventually reached a consensus that installing the chicane and running a non-championship race, even without Ferrari if necessary, was the best course of action, and made efforts to have delegates replace FIA staff in case of a withdrawal. Hence, the 20 drivers were called upon, and the group presented their plan. While no driver expressed disagreement, the Ferrari drivers did not voice their opinion on the matter. As a result, the 19 principals who were in attendance made a resolution that unless a mutually agreeable decision could be reached with the FIA in the best interests of the sport, they would choose not to participate in the race. Race account. At the beginning of the race, all the cars followed the standard FIA race procedure by lining up on the grid. As the formation lap commenced, with Charlie Whiting signalling the green light, a complete field of 20 cars set off for a single lap before taking their positions on the starting grid. However, at turn 13, which was the entrance to the pit lane and the centre of controversy, all the teams using Michelin tyres returned to their respective pit box areas. This left only 6 cars from the 3 Bridgestone teams, Ferrari, Jordan and Minardi, to begin the race. The fans' reaction. Beholding the strangest race ever, an uproar of displeasure ensued. Due to the retirements of the drivers who qualified ahead of them, Michael Schumacher and his Ferrari teammate Barrichello became the leading starters based on their original grid positions. They were followed by Thiago Monteiro and Narain Karthikeyan, both driving for Jordan. The remaining field of 6 consisted of Christian Albers and Patrick Friesacker from Minardi. Schumacher maintained his lead as the race began, and the only position change occurred when Albers overtook Karthikeyan but later lost the position again during the race. The 2 Ferrari drivers quickly established a significant lead over their competitors, but by the 10th lap, a considerable number of the estimated 100,000 to 130,000 spectators had started leaving the grandstand. Thousands of fans went to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway ticket office to demand refunds, leading to the intervention of the police to maintain order. Throughout the race, boos could be heard from the disgruntled audience, and some upset fans resorted to throwing beer cans and water bottles onto the track. In the end, Schumacher secured the victory, marking his 84th career win, his 4th win at the US Grand Prix, and his only race win for the 2005 season. Barrichello finished in 2nd place, trailing Schumacher by 1.522 seconds. Monteiro and Karthikeyan claimed 3rd and 4th place respectively, albeit more than a lap behind. The Minardi drivers, Albers and Friesacker, crossed the finish line in 5th and 6th place, 2 laps adrift from the race winner. Notably, this race was significant as all 4 drivers from the Jordan and Minardi teams earned their first points in Formula 1. Karthikeyan's points marked the first ever points scored by an Indian driver in Formula 1. Monteiro claimed the only podium of his F1 career, and it was also the last race in which the Minardi team collected points before undergoing changes. Now, during the podium ceremony, none of the expected dignitaries were present. Thus, Ferrari team members accepted their awards quietly and promptly left the scene. However, Monteiro remained to celebrate his first and only podium finish, which was a historic achievement for a Portuguese driver. Aftermath of the race. Schumacher's sole victory in 2005 propelled him from 5th to 3rd place in the World Drivers' Championship standings. However, Alonso and Raikkonen maintained their positions at the top with 59 and 37 points respectively, while Schumacher closed in with 34 points. Barrichello's 2nd place finish allowed him to move up to 4th in the championship, tallying 29 points, while Trulli slipped to 5th with 27 points. Ferrari advanced to joint 2nd place alongside McLaren, both accumulating 63 points. However, Renault maintained their lead with 76 points. The race also saw Jordan and Minardi score points, breaking free from their tie with Bar Honda at the bottom of the constructors' standings. Nonetheless, the race was heavily criticised by many, fans and officials alike, and some even called for Mosley's resignation. How did the FIA react? The day after the race, the FIA issued a statement justifying their decision to reject the proposed tyre change or the installation of a chicane. They argued that Formula One operated on clear and unalterable rules, and teams couldn't make adjustments when they arrived at a race with the wrong equipment. The FIA contended that implementing a chicane would have meant racing on a significantly altered track without following modern safety procedures, exposing them to potential legal liabilities in case of accidents. Furthermore, the FIA summoned the 7 teams using Michelin tyres to appear before the World Motorsport Council at the FIA headquarters in France on June 29. The purpose of the hearing was for the teams to explain their failure to participate in the race, which could be seen as a violation of the terms outlined in the Concord Agreement. The FIA, in the interest of transparency, later published copies of the letters they had sent to each team. Apparently, the teams were charged with breaching Article 151C of the International Sporting Code, which pertains to acts that are detrimental to the interests of competition or motorsport as a whole. In later events, the FIA released a press release by Max Mosley in the form of a Q&A session to provide clarification on the FIA's position regarding the controversy. Mosley used a hypothetical situation to draw an analogy, highlighting that if engines from a particular manufacturer had oil starvation issues in a specific corner due to high lateral loading, those cars would simply have to run at a slower pace. He reiterated that the reason for not implementing the chicane was solely because it had not been tested and was deemed unsafe. Mosley pointed out that the alternatives proposed by the FIA were viable and questioned why the teams did not consider using the pit lane as an alternative, especially since the Michelin teams could still compete for the 7th and 8th point scoring positions with only 6 Bridgestone cars on the grid. Then, about 10 days later, the FIA World Motorsport Council found the teams guilty of not having suitable tyres, but acknowledged the presence of significant mitigating circumstances. The teams were also found guilty of failing to allow their cars to start the race, but were cleared of the other 3 charges. The specific punishment was not determined and was scheduled to be announced on September 14th. However, on July 22nd, the FIA World Motorsport Council reversed its previous decision and declared the Michelin teams innocent of all charges. This reversal was based on evidence previously submitted to the FIA Senate. McLaren's Ron Dennis and Red Bull principal Christian Horner informed Mosley and the FIA Senate that Indiana state law left the Michelin teams with no choice but to withdraw from the race. They argued that participating in the race could have potentially led to criminal charges for knowingly endangering others even if no accident occurred. Horner later stated in an interview that while it was incredibly difficult to withdraw from the race, there were larger issues at play that day beyond the sport itself. Talks on reimbursement. Nevertheless, on June 28, Michelin made an announcement that they would compensate all race fans who had purchased tickets for the Grand Prix. They plan to issue refund checks through the Speedway ticket office, reimbursing the full ticket price for the race by the end of September. In addition, Michelin purchased 20,000 tickets for the 2006 United States Grand Prix, which will be given to spectators who had attended the 2005 race as a gesture of goodwill. Apart from the ticket refunds, there were discussions about organising a second non-championship race at the Indianapolis circuit. McLaren team principal Ron Dennis proposed the idea at the 2005 French Grand Prix, suggesting that an additional race could be held at the American circuit after the official season finale in Shanghai, and it was even reported that the teams had already discussed the concept with Bernie Ecclestone. However, the following day, Tony George dismissed the possibility, stating, "There will be no race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway this fall." Therefore, during the 2005 Champ Car World Series Grand Prix of Cleveland, which took place 1 week after the US Grand Prix, free admission was given to anyone presenting a ticket stub from the US Grand Prix as a way to acknowledge and accommodate disappointed fans. So, what do you think of this controversial race? And do you think the incident could have been avoided? Kindly drop your thoughts in the comment section down below.